church history is a study of the development of Christian thinking over the centuries. Every generation generation of Christians that teach or believe anything had actually received what they have believed from their forefathers. Today in Nigeria, the prevailing Christian culture is Pentecostalism. And the downside of Pentecostalism is that they trace their church history to 1900. And it's understandable because Pentecostalism did start in America, at least in earnest, in 1900s with the ministry of Charles Parham. However, long before 1900s, Christianity had thrived. There had been 1900 or 1900 years of Christian life. And so church history is a development of thinking over the years. And we have the blessing, whatever we believe today is essentially what our forefathers have taught us or have believed over the century. There are some churches that we refer to as Orthodox Church. Many of these churches subscribe to doctrines that were taught by our fathers, which had come to us from the first, third, even first century. Our subscription to a Bible today, or our commitment to a sola Bible or to a Bible alone today, comes from the belief that the Bible was written by God's own spokesman. The New Testament were compiled and written by Christ's apostles. And so church history is a development of Christian thinking all over the centuries. I have to make that point to make this clear, that when I talk about the prosperity gospel itself is a development over centuries. The prosperity gospel, like I said in my last video, started with the pragmatism of the 19th century. And that translated into the work of a man called Phineas Quimby and his mesmerism. Now, Phineas Quimby had an influence, he had influences over a lot of people, but one prominent individual that he had a great influence over is a woman called Mary Eddy Baker. And that's the person we want to talk about today. Mary Eddy Baker was born in the United States in a place called New Hampshire in 1821. In July 1821. Now, this is very important because America is central to a lot of what has happened in our world today. America is the center for so much development, both in the sciences, arts, and religion also. And so, in fact, some of us joke that a lot of Christianity that we practice today is American Christianity, okay? So she came into being, or she was born into a time when there were lots of development of ideas in American theology. Mary Eddy went to a church or grew up in a church, in a congregationalist church. Congregationalism is an Orthodox church. It's one of those churches that proceeded from the Protestant Reformation, okay? The only difference is that they're a little different from the Presbyterian arm of Protestantism in the sense that the center, they believe in a church politics in which the people decide and make decisions, and that they do not rest solely and only on the congregation, on the presbyters, that's on the elders, okay? A lot of the Baptist churches that we have today take their tradition from the congregational setup, okay? So she grew up in such a setting, and so she must have been used to a lot of Christian doctrines, a lot of Christian Orthodox doctrine. While she was growing up, Eddy had some health challenges, just like many other people would normally have. It was said of her that people who knew the family described her as suddenly falling to the ground, writhing and screaming, or silent and apparently unconscious for hours. So she had this health challenge with the health system of that time couldn't diagnose, and she couldn't be healed. However, in October 1862, she met Phineas Quimby, who was, like I have said in my last video, a mesmerist, a healer. And after taking her through therapy, she got better. And in the process, she became interested in what Quimby was doing. Following this, Eddy became a student of Quimby, though she rejected his religion. Quimby was not a Christian, and he had a strong aversion to Christianity. However, it was Eddy who became convinced that Quimby's mesmerism could be spiritualized and made to look similar to the miraculous events in the Bible. And so Eddy took the mesmerism of Quimby and tried to make it look like the miracles of Jesus and the apostles. Okay. Subsequently, in the life of Eddie, especially after Quimby had died, she wrote a book called Science and Health. And that book is what led essentially to the group called the Christian Science, which she would eventually develop to become a church. The Christian Science denies the Trinity and many historic doctrines of historical Christianity. And it should be noted that there's one central tenet to the Christian Science, and that tenet is healing. At the heart of Christian Science, they want you to get better. Okay, the teaching of Christian Science essentially is getting you healed of your diseases. Do not forget that the background of Eddie came from a congregational background. Okay, so she came from an Orthodox Protestant background. She met Quimby, who healed her using his mesmerism and other techniques, and she tried to combine mesmerism with Orthodox Christianity. Okay, and that is what gave us Christian Science. This is what Walter Martins wrote about Eddie and the Christian Science. She writes, the central claim of Eddie and Christian Science is that she has restored to Christendom the power of healing lost since the days of the early church. It is continually reiterated in the literature of the Christian Science that their leader healed just as Jesus healed. Not only this, but Eddie herself boldly asserted that she healed all types of diseases, including cancer, tuberculosis, and diphtheria. Now, please note the first line that she said. She said that, or they said that Christian Science is seeking to restore to Christendom the power of healing that had been lost in the church. If you have ever heard of that phrase before, it is a common phrase that is used today by many Pentecostal churches, okay? That they want to go back to the first century, they want to restore healing as it used to be. Now, it is continually reiterated in the literature of Christian Science that their leader, that is to say, Eddie, was somebody who healed all kinds of diseases, okay? And she demonstrated divine power. Martin goes on and said this in his book on Christian Science. Most illness cured by Christian scientists are imagined illnesses that lack medical documentation and are seldom thoroughly verified by anyone other than the scientists or their sympathizers. The physical world to most Christian scientists is an illusion of the mortal mind, but they are quick to seize every opportunity to avail themselves of all the comforts of the same mortal mind, which the same mortal mind conjures up. So basically what Martin was saying is that while they claim to bring about healing in many people, the truth of the matter is that the Christian scientists never really did carry out healing, okay? Most of their healing claims to healing were never verified. In fact, just like many Pentecostals or older Pentecostals, okay, the Christian scientists also refused medication and they denied their children medication. And there were many accounts of children dying having not undergone this medication. Now, this story of Mary Eddy Baker and the Christian Science is actually central to this discussion about the prosperity gospel, which has two tenets, which is essentially prosperity and healing. Prosperity and healing. The part of prosperity says that God wants you to be rich, and the part of healing says that God wants to heal you, or God wants you to maintain divine health. My argument in these videos has simply been that this is not Orthodox Christianity. This is not something that the apostles passed to us. This is not something that our fathers taught. This is not something, it's not a tradition that's been passed through the centuries. This is a latest development in Christendom. And we have been able to see that the pragmatism of the 19th century gave us Quimby, and now it is giving us Eddy, who went on to create or to form the Christian Science. And the Christian Science and their tenets reject most Orthodox Christian doctrine. In fact, if you're going to trace it down, you'll find out that just like Eddy, many Pentecostal organizations also reject the Trinity. If they do not reject it in name, they reject it in practice, in the sense that it is not something they lay hard claims to, okay? However, the central doctrine of the Christian Science is healing, getting healing at all costs. Jesus came to heal you, healing either by mesmerism or through mind over matter, or one thing or the other. My point in this video is simply to say that healing is not the Christian message. The prosperity gospel is teaching us prosperity and healing, and this is not the Christian message. Hopefully with time we'll come to understand and appreciate more and more what the gospel of Christ entails, but it is certainly not what EDDY taught or the Christian Science teach, and it is certainly not what the prosperity gospel teaches. Thank you.